topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Who is January Jones? She is not a young, beautiful, talented actress on Mad Men. She is not an older, gorgeous, exotic dancer from the Johnny Carson Show. She is an author, and she wrote, "Thou Shalt Not Whine," the 11th commandment that reached #1 at Amazon.com. She is a reality TV golf personality with World High Stakes Golf televised on HDNet. She is a humorist and winologist expert. She is your featured host today on January Jones Sharing Success Stories. So sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh and listen to Ms. Jones with her eclectic roster of guests as you learn life's lessons. These stories plus sharing equals success. Welcome, and remember, beware, because you are entering the no whining world of January Jones.
Good day, everyone. I hope you're having a fabulous day. I'm January Jones, and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast today. As you can see, I'm wearing my glitter hat and I have my glitter cane. I'm getting ready to start promoting Glitter Granny Gifts. That's going to be at Amazon.com. I'll be selling everything that glitter and glows with my associate, my little puppy, Ginger Ale, who will be helping me sell. We'll be launching the website later this month, and I'll tell you more about it as it gets closer. Right now, I'm so happy to have you here with us today. But let me ask you a question. Tell me, how do you feel about texting? Oh, yeah. What are your thoughts, good or bad? Tell me, does it drive you crazy when people do texting while you're eating with them at a table? Especially if your husband does it. Do your kids and your grandkids only respond to text? Oh, yeah, I've been through that. And I can tell you, if I want to get a hold of anyone in this family, don't bother calling them, because if you text, they'll get back to you within 5 minutes, guaranteed. Now, let me ask you, have you ever heard of an incredible book called A Twist of Lemon? 100 Curious Stories in Exactly 100 Words. Well, I just got finished reading this book, and believe you, I could not put it down. It was great. If you can answer yes or maybe to any of these questions, then you are in the right place. And I'd like to welcome you to January Jones Sharing Senior Success Stories. So now it's time to rest, relax, go get yourself some cheese, get some crackers, and welcome to the No Wine Zone. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. You know, teens and preteens are like Olympic athletes when it comes to texting with both thumbs. And while texting is a great way to communicate, and nothing beats printing or old-fashioned cursive handwriting for building self-confidence, reduce stress, improving your vocabulary, memory, and much, much more, according to a former teacher who is my guest today. She is the author of A Twist of Lemon, 100 Curious Stories in Exactly 100 Words. It's my pleasure to welcome to the show today, Arlene Hemingway.
Good afternoon, January.
Oh, wow. I've been so looking forward to having you on the podcast. As I shared earlier, I read your book. I could not put it down. And It was intriguing, fascinating, and prompted me to, I immediately tried to write something in 100 words. And guess what? It's hard, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. But it's well worth the effort. It's the challenge, but you feel so good when you accomplish it. It's amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, let's start with where your success story began and how you became, where you were born and who your early mentors were and what was your early life like?
Well, I was born in New York City. And because I was born in a city that has a reputation, when you say New York, it conjures up a lot of things, especially Times Square. And a lot of you mentioned sparkle. You expect a lot of things that go in New York. And when
Mhm.
I eventually wound up in Long Island, New York, but I went to school in New York, and most of my upbringing into adulthood was in New York City. And going to school, I was always interested in music because my mother uh, used to sing, and she had taken singing lessons. She was a classical singer, and she loved opera, and then she moved into the gospel genre, but she loved that. So I was always surrounded by records of singers and classical music as opposed to other kinds of music that was there. So that's where my love of music started, with classical music. And
Mhm. Mhm.
that I take piano lessons until I reached the age, I guess it was when you're 18, you no longer have to take them, something of that nature, and then you're on your own. But by the time you've taken piano lessons, from the time you're single digit age till you get to that point, it's kind of ingrained in you. And it
Mhm.
was something that I did well. I wound up by going to a school, music and art high school, even starting there. I'd gone to a private school before, and they did a lot of plays in the private school, and I always had a featured role of some kind. And then
Mhm.
at art high school, and then on to where I graduated from, the Juilliard School of Music. So my whole life has been stacked with music from the beginning to becoming a professional musician. I seem to be called, shall we say, to do it.
Well, your resume is quite impressive. First of all, starting with the name Hemingway. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I'm so jealous for anyone who's ever written. Can you imagine having that last name and submitting a book to a publisher?
Yeah.
But I'm also curious how you did the transition from playing the piano to becoming an incredible master organ player. How did that come about? Who taught you to do that?
When I was going to school, even in elementary school, my mother would take me every year to the Christmas show at Rockefeller Plaza, where they
Oh,
had a great Wurlitzer organ. And I became fascinated watching the pant leg of the man at the organ. And I kept saying that, and I just stare at that, and I became enamored of that. And sooner or later, after taking piano for so many years, I decided I wanted to take organ. So I did. I started taking organ, I guess, a few years before entering Juilliard. In
mhm,
fact, I, during my summer vacations from high school, I would go and practice the organ in two different places. That was my summer. Go to this place and practice for a couple of hours, go to that place. And my teachers, for some reason, didn't show up for my lessons. Okay, I'll teach you, but I had very few organ lessons before deciding I wanted to go to Juilliard. So on my application, I didn't say that I had a lot of lessons. I said I had lessons, but I was basically self-taught. When I took the entrance exam, and then it was no need to say, if I'm in the school, you've accepted me. So I guess but I really was so thrilled at playing that, and I called it the Queen of Instruments. So
oh,
I would practice in the summer like 4 to 5 hours a day. Go to one place and practice for 2.5 hours or so, and go to the other organ and practice for two, and then walk home. So all of this went into my training and thinking, and I was so excited and delighted, of course, when they accepted me into Juilliard. I took 3 entrance exams. I really didn't care how I got into Juilliard.
wow,
Uh,
wow, yeah.
Voice, piano, and organ. And I got in on organ, and that was fine with me.
Wow.
So my
Wow.
dream was fulfilled. And then I was really on my way with the training, and then leaving there and going to a different life of being a professional musician.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break. And if you know someone who whines, this is the book for you.
Lately, there's a whining epidemic in our world. People are even whining about whining. Are you sick and tired of listening to everyone whining all the time? So was January Jones, the author of Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, that reached #1 at Amazon.com. Ms. Jones based her book on a survey of the top 10 things that people whine about at all ages and all stages of life. January is a success coach that can tell you how to help others. When you buy Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, you'll find out what people whine about and how to stop them from whining. This is the perfect gift book to give or get for any occasion. Thou Shalt Not Whine was voted the best gift to be given anonymously for those special people in your life. Ms. Jones is an internationally known author in the style of Irma Bombeck, specializing in housewife humor, with her book being published in Korea and China. You can find Thou Shalt Not Whine at Amazon.com.
Welcome back with my guest, Arlene Hemingway, today. She's the author of A Twist of Lemon, which is why, Arlene, I wore a lemon-colored hat in honor of your book.
Thank you.
Yes, I felt in a lemony mood. Share with us what happens after you graduate from prestigious Juilliard as an organ master. What kind of a career? What did you do then? How did you support yourself?
Well, I supported myself by being a 7-day-a-week musician, because that's all I did. The name of Julia does carry some clout to it, so that does open the door, and that's very helpful. But when you have Juilliard in back of it, people are more apt to say, So I wanted something that I did not have to work every single day if I did not want to, but I wound up, because you're involved with the organ when you do have the organ as your major. So I was a classroom music teacher for the 5 days a week, but that means getting concerts ready and having a chorus and all kinds of things that were involved. And then I wound up having a church, which I normally did. That's Sunday. And I had a synagogue on Saturday. So I really ran the gamut of different kinds of services, which were fascinating. So my day was 7 days a week. I got up at 4:15 every morning and meditated for 15 or 20 minutes in the day, and didn't end most of my days until 10:30 or so at night, except on the weekend. There were a couple of days there that I allowed myself. I didn't have to stay up till 10:30, but if some event came, it was there. So that was my only respite, but 7 days a week. So this had to be very disciplined with regard to my life. And I had to make sure I didn't pick up the wrong music bag, because I had one for sacred music and I had one for not so sacred music. And I had one, if I did funeral work, which I'd done before, that was then a special kind of category. So it was like, where am I going? Right bag? Good. And off I went.
So as a music teacher, what age group did you teach, and how long did you do it, and did you enjoy that?
From K through 9th grade. And that was part of the rub, because no other teacher had that kind of responsibility. I was hired to be an elementary school teacher. About 3 or 4 years in, they said, now you're going to teach junior high school. Well, if you've been teaching elementary for so long, you have to kind of bone up and get back, not just saying, come into school, this is your new assignment. And that's the way some of the discord started, which led me in event to getting up at the 4:15 in the morning time slot to find answers of how to to solve some of the problems that I was having, which a lot evolved around discrimination, frankly. And so
Oh,
this created a problem, and I had to work around that so that I didn't lose a job and that I didn't lose my sanity. So between working on the two of them, this is where the writing came in, because I literally called out from my house one day. Things were getting so bogged down at work, and more was be added onto my schedule. Wait a minute, you hired me to do this. Now I'm staying an extra 40 an hour after school to do this, and I have to come early because I'm a special music teacher and have the course. Oh, there's no stopping this. You're just adding more. I never had a respite. I didn't eat lunch with other teachers because they scheduled me so that I could travel to another school to take care of another class from another teacher. And so it was a matter of, I need help. And when that occurred, this is where the writing came in, because I was given the directive, well, thou shalt get up in the morning, and thou shalt sit at a table, and thou shalt have a pad and a pencil, and thou shalt. So these things literally started coming through, and I just couldn't bear the pressure any morning. And I said, help. And
oh,
I was there with my candle every morning, and then the writing and the information started coming.
okay. That's, often if you put yourself out into the universe, those things happen.
Yes.
Before we talk about that, I want you to share with our listeners your website information and how they can get your book.
Well, my book is on Amazon
Okay.
or at their local bookstore, which they can get it there too. But my information can be gotten at info at Arlene Dwayne Hemingway, because I usually use the entire name,
Uh-huh.
.com. And if
.com.
they put that, they will find that. If they go to their Google or wherever, they'll be able to tap into that information. Thank you for asking.
Oh, for sure. That's what
Thank
we're
you.
here to do. And
Yeah.
actually, once I start Glitter Granny Gifts, your book is going to be one of the books that
Oh, thank you. I'm so delighted. Thank you so much.
will be featured on my bookshelf
Thank
there.
you. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
I only feature books that I've written or books that have been written by people who have been guests on my show. And
Oh,
frankly, most of those books I've been fortunate enough to be able to read. And so I look forward to sharing those with our listeners they'll be able to get those at the website soon. Looking back on, you mentioned something about discrimination. Looking back on your music and teaching career, what was the best thing about it, and then what was the downside?
the best thing about it was that I enjoyed teaching. But one of the self-centering things was, no matter what happened to me with regard to how I felt about my employers, the children always came first. I was always aware of that, and nothing then could keep me separated from them except to clear myself, that I could manage and not put my angst out on them in that teaching situation. So this is where that was extremely helpful, because after a while, believe it or not, I became acclimated to getting up at 4:15 in the morning, and it just was, this was a great way to jumpstart my day. And then I would exercise after that for 45 minutes. I did all of this in the morning because knowing that I would have rehearsals later in the evening, there's no way I could come home and start to do this at 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. It'd be time, get from 4 to 10 doesn't seem like it's a wide range, shall we say. So there's not much leeway to do, and you have to be extremely disciplined to gather that. But one of the best things was that that voice answered me, which led to my starting to write a diary, because there was that directive, like thou shalt, and so I started writing a few words in a diary every day, even if I said, no matter what happens, the sun is shining somewhere and it's going to shine with me tomorrow. Whatever that sentence or word was. And the statements became longer and longer. And then for some reason, I started writing stories. I took a
Mhm.
couple of writing courses, and in one
Okay.
of the writing courses I took, they introduced the drabble, and that was the life-changing moment. All from getting up at 4:15 in the morning. That's where it led to. And
Oh my gosh.
it
Well, talking about writing, 50 years ago, I wrote a book about Jacqueline Kennedy, and
mm,
60 years later, people are still asking who killed Kennedy.
yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Are you still wondering who killed Kennedy? Over 50 years later, the assassination is still a mystery. It is unfinished business for our country. Now, get ready for a theory that you've never heard before, but will make more sense than any other conspiracy theory that you've ever heard in the past. January Jones speaks the unspeakable in her book, Jackie, Ari, and Jack, The Tragic Love Triangle, connecting Jackie and Aristotle Onassis romantically prior to JFK's assassination. Did you know that Ari was Jackie's guest in the White House during the JFK funeral? He was the only non-family member who was invited by Jackie to stay there during the funeral. Aristotle Onassis was one of the wealthiest men in the world, with the means, the motive, and the money to order an assassination that was the perfect crime of the last century. Ari needed class, and Jackie needed cash. They were perfect for each other. Now, what is Camelot? It is but another tragic love triangle. Jackie, Ari, and Jack is available at JanuaryJones.com, Amazon.com, and audiobooks.com, read by Ms. Jones.
Welcome back with our guest,
Thank
Arlene
you.
Hemingway, and she is going to share with us her experience with writing drabbles. That's Drabbles, rhymes with Scrabbles. And
Mhm.
how did you come up with this name, Drabbles?
I didn't come up with it. It was a firmly established writing form. And in the
Okay.
class where I learned about this, no one in the class had learned. This was an assignment. Everyone in the class had they either wrote poetry or most of them wrote short stories. I used to write things that were like 500, we'll say, to about 1,000 words. And
Okay.
when we all looked at each other and said, "What is that?" She said, "Well, that's your next assignment." That's all she said. This is a 100-word story. So the rest I kind of looked up on my own to find out what was going on.
Mhm.
And I mentioned to so many people, I thought it was going to be easy because if you're writing 500 to 1,000 words, 100 words doesn't seem like very much. But surprise, it was the hardest thing I ever had to do
Right.
because you discover you've written too much. You've repeated that. It's
Yeah.
like seeing a news show, one after the other, where they emphasize the same important thing of the day. Breaking news. It breaks. If you watch 10 programs, it breaks on each program. It's always breaking news. So you say, I've seen that. I've seen that. And
Yeah.
this is what happened. So I discovered that being concise is very helpful. And this, in a sense, was what got me through my job situation because eventually I didn't write fiction
Yeah.
as a drabble is. I could literally script what I needed to say to a higher up and not get them angry because they were expecting me to bristle because it had given me so much trouble. They wanted me to leave. That's what they wanted me to do.
Oh,
Discrimination.
wow.
And it didn't work because I would come in and say, okay, I've come to you many times before, so I didn't have to repeat what I'd sent them in messages. And now the thing that I spoke about has come to pass, like having 33 children in a class and you're supposed to have 30.
Yeah.
Oh, just go ahead and teach. I said, I can't do that. That's not what's in the contract to be breaking. Oh, just go ahead. Because if I had taught 33, they would then expect me to teach 33, no matter how many. You broke the rule before, so
Yeah.
just go ahead and do it. So I refused. And they didn't like that. And I said, now what are we going to do about it? And they just sat back and looked at me. That's all she's saying. And
Mhm.
every time, January, there was a solution to one of the problems that I'd spoken about. So that made them angry too, because darn it, she's not getting us angry and she really knows what she's talking about. So my
Oh,
problems got chipped off one at a time by speaking my mind, but
mhm.
speaking in a concise fashion, usually less than 100 words when I spoke to them.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I started reading the book the other night, and
Mm-hmm.
I took it with me to read. I usually read in bed before I
Ah,
hopefully
yes.
fall asleep. I read your book and I was intrigued with it. Then I fell asleep. And then in the middle of the night, I woke up and I found myself here at my computer.
Uh-huh.
And I was attempting to write something in 100 words. And
Yes.
oh my gosh, it is not easy. I can attest to that. But when you actually do accomplish it,
Mm-hmm.
it's an incredible feeling. Oh,
It is so, yeah.
so my husband's here to listen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't write fiction. I wrote a drabble about some of my personal life experience.
Mhm.
And it was intriguing and very difficult to do. I've recently worked on a memoir that my children have asked me to
Yes.
put together.
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
looked at the drabble and then I looked at my Storyworth memoir and I thought, why didn't I take each chapter and just make it 100 words?
That is one of the things that Drabble affords, because even though the premise of a Drabble is it is microfiction, that's the form, I call the nonfiction version a ally, a companion or Drabble ally. So that's something I did name.
Hmm.
One of the things the Drabble is good for is getting your memoirs together, because so many people in this time frame are either keeper of the history of their family line. They want to do that
Yeah.
before their great grandparents and so forth leave the planet, and they then want to get snippets of what's happened. And you can do that so easily by using the Drabble form. Take one thing, write it on a card, I suggest. This
Hmm.
is it, the date on it. You don't even have to put it in chronological order, because if you say events around my birthday party when I was 15, well, you'll know the date and you remember that story that someone spilled ice cream on the cat, or someone gave you a football and you hate football and you're more into soccer or something. So all of these things sync. That's one of the many things that using the Drabble form can help you with. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. Now, what is Drabble? Where did it come from? It's not an acronym, is it?
No, it comes from England. In about the 1980s, there was a practice, and this comes something that was started in a sense like the Big Red Book, and that was something affiliated with Monty Python
Oh.
and that group. So
Mhm.
you can see some of the humor and stuff just thinking about that consortium. Well,
Mhm.
they were in England, and at that time, it seems that a popular game, because it's in a game of books, it's in a book of games.
Yeah.
Uh, One of the games would be that you're at someone's house. Maybe in these times they'd play cards or something, but it used to be people would be saying, "Okay, now everyone's going to write a novel." And I can't imagine that people coming to someone's house today and say, "You want to write a novel?" They'd probably look at you as if you were crazy. But
Yeah.
it, but and there seemed to be no, you don't know what the time limit was. The first person to finish was the winner. It doesn't say about the quality or the subject matter. And
Okay.
who knows how long did it take then over a course for a couple of days and you send in the result? How did that work?
Hmm.
But the Framingham Institute of Science Fiction discovered that this was really a good form to keep and to propagate. So they created the rules. Thou shalt not make it more than 100 words.
Okay.
And so they did. So even today, they set the rules. And then rather than just being a novel, it could go on. It was set in time. Those are the rules. It's science fiction. It's 100 words, no more, no less. 100 words, not 101, not 99. And
Okay.
so I used to have travel contests and things, and people would send in great things, but there'd be 98 words. You lose. It's not 100 words or 101 words. You need to count your words. So it's discipline.
You know,
Yeah.
when I was working on it, when I was getting to about 80, 90 words, I was in my mind thinking, well, I've got to wrap this up quickly. And you start to panic. And then what a satisfaction when I did the word count and it came in exactly at 100.
Oh,
Who
great.
knew? Who knew?
Who knew? Who
Yeah,
knew?
that felt great.
I'm glad that you were using the form, the Drabble Ally, to write other things besides fiction, because it is so helpful. By the way, you said that you had read a lot of them. What is your favorite Drabble? Do you have a favorite?
Oh gosh. Well, you know, I the ones that kind of intrigued me were the drabbles that were like 1 or 2, 3 pages. So it'd be
Okay, right.
You'd finish that, and then you'd get another person's
Yeah.
perspective. Those intrigued me. So that made you could actually. Has anyone? Well, I know you put all your drabbles in a book. Have other people followed this genre?
No, it has been that some people have looked at it, even some famous science fiction writers, but they're so confined with 100 words, they can't say everything they need to do. And then they would have to acknowledge that 100 word form. Also in a drabble, you cannot use the redundancy that you see in other stories, because in 100 words, you're going to remember, you use the name, for example, January loved her sparkles and her Western outfits. And then January got on her horse and met her husband, and then January went to dinner. Well, we know the main character is January, but if you repeat it 4 times in a 100 word length, it kind of wears on you, that redundancy. So you know who the main character is, you describe, yes, and she wore her hat. So you're still describing who the main character is without using the name over and over and over again. You're doing the attributes of the character, and that makes it much more interesting to do. So when you look at the work when you finished, if you repeated the name and the same situation using the same exact words, then something needs to be amended. It's not as exciting. So I'm aware of that when I write it. I said that. I need to repeat that. It's important, but I can't say it in the same framework I did, because the reader's going to be bored and say, okay, she just repeated that 3 times. Let's just move on.
Right. Well, you know, this is a priceless interview, and right now we're going to share some other priceless personalities who have been on this show.
Have you ever met someone who was unforgettable? Someone who has touched your heart and soul? People who have faced difficult problems? People who have struggled to find solutions? People who fearlessly shared their stories? People who have not only informed you, but inspired you. People who have priceless personalities. I have been fortunate to host an internet radio talk show called January Jones Sharing Success Stories, and it has been my privilege to interview hundreds of guests. My guests have shared their stories, their struggles, their secrets, and their successes in their own words. In this book, we're talking about people dealing with problems such as incest, molestation, runaway kids, child abuse, drug abuse, polygamy, unemployment, scandal, and starting over. Then there are my guests dealing with difficult physical struggles such as blindness, cancer, and birth defects that are beyond traumatic. My guests have all been exciting, eclectic, and energizing. They have amazed, amused, and even astonished me. I have adored getting to meet them, and I adore sharing them with you.
Attention all listeners. Priceless Personalities, Success Stories Shared by January Jones, Volume 2 is now available at Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle editions. You'll be able to meet 10 amazing people who will be sharing their own personal stories with all their struggles, successes, and solutions, sprinkled with lots of humor and hope. Priceless Personalities features a teenager who becomes one of the famous Supremes from Motown, a nurse who as a humorist helps people to heal, an inspiring laughter yoga instructor, a mother dealing with the loss of a child, an incredible motivational speaker, a woman who married 5 times, a gifted paranormal nurse, a wise economist, a funny female humorist, along with an older man sharing his sweet childhood in the Deep South. January's guests are all amazing and amusing. You will never forget meeting them. Go to Amazon.com for your own priceless experience.
Welcome back. And all of my books are also available at audible.com too. We're visiting with a very priceless personality here today on our show, Arlene Hemingway, who graduated from Juilliard. And let's talk a little bit about your incredible music career and now your writing career. How are they similar and how are they different, Arlene?
Well, music is something that touches the emotions, whether it's silent or not. And with music, you do not have to have created the work itself to perform it in a wonderful fashion. You can do something that's extremely moving. For example, since I was an organist and I love Bach, if you're an organist, there's no way you can resist Bach or get around him if you're a classical organist. And I remember that I had the advantage of playing, since I played every single week in a church or a temple, and I had unusual experiences to happen when I played the organ. Many people, in fact, the churches that I played for, the congregation did not get up and leave with the first sound of the organ at the end. That seems to be the end. The pastor says the benediction. Everyone says, great, it's Sunday. We're leaving now. We're going to go to the ball field and we're going to start the cookout. My audiences sat down and listened, which was very, very odd. They wanted to hear every note I played. And I figured, what is going, the first time it happened, it just seemed very strange. But that happened every time I played. The people in church did not leave. They stayed until I finished and I related that when I was going to school. These people are not going. And they just figured, oh, you're just being self-service. But that's not it. There was something that I did that communicated. In writing, it's the other way around in a sense. You have written something that people are responding to. Mm-hmm. It's not that they've written and they're responding. And they then are seeing situations that they might not have thought of the answer to, but you may be supplying. Because since my book is called A Twist of Lemon, and at each instance, it doesn't end the way it starts. It's like, how did she get from point A to point B in 100 words? So it's like, wait a minute, what happened? And many will go back and read the story again. Did I see that right? And they'll say, yes, she said that. So it's the kind of thing that you can use as a meditation. I've had people say, the way you said you can take it and read it with your coffee. Someone has told me that that's exactly what she has done. She reads a story a day, and that just kind of sets the day. And many people then have aha moments. Yes. They're having a friend who's going through a crisis. It's not always easy to tell a friend something that you think about what's going on. They didn't ask you, and you don't want to be someone who pries, but you might say, I just saw a story about this. And it may, if that person reads it, they may come up to a conclusion to their problem or situation they never thought of before. But they've just read 100 words, so it really hasn't taxed them like, oh, is that, it leads them onto a whole trajectory where they may not feel set upon. They may then be a little bit empowered to do something different to answer the problem in their life. So that's the different thing. They both deal with the emotions. The first one can lead you to cry if someone is playing something beautifully. And I have some people come back weeping, literally. You played that so beautifully, my heart. Thank you very much. No one has ever said they've cried for a story, but they have said, wow, it gave me such something to really think about. It was so different. Also, the fact that you mentioned you woke up and you could go to sleep and read a story. You didn't have to stay up to read a half a novel or
Right.
1,000 pages to get to the end of the chapter so you could get to work. So there are lots of advantages and many cross connections of that kind. But both creative, both require some thought involved, whether you're emoting something this way or doing it from the heart with your pencil and paper, which is an important use rather than using a texting device or your thumbs.
Okay, now that's my next question. We started off discussing texting versus writing,
Yeah.
the pros and cons. Now, would you share your thoughts on this subject for us?
Yes. In fact, I heard today from someone who said, you know what? I discovered that the art of communication disappears when you're involved with your thumbs. That is kind of mindless. And there are shortcuts when you were texting. You're not thinking in terms of sentences. There is shortcut language. It's yes, it's no, or it's symbols that you're using. So it's mindless. You're not paying attention. And you said your children, if you text them, they're back to you in 5 minutes. They bypasses the reading. It's just like, okay, quick, now I can get back to what I'm doing. But when you're actually writing, you are coming from the idea that is sparked by something you see. And I am inspired by something that I see, something that I hear, something that a conversation, for example, that was not meant for me originally. Two people are talking so loudly, I can't concentrate on something over here. They're sitting next to each other, but they're broadcasting it so that I can hear it. And I've discovered that is for me to listen. I might be getting some information for a story that way. And I always carry something to write in my purse. I always carry a pad. I can't use a pencil there because the point sometimes breaks when it's in the purse. So I do have to use a pen. But at all other times, I use only, and this is to create my stories, only legal pads and pencils. There's a reason for that, a very important reason. It comes to the head like, oh, look at that beautiful bird. You're stopped in your tracks. Texting doesn't stop you in your tracks.
No.
Momentarily, you are stopped at what you're doing. You're observing, you're watching, you're paying attention, you're listening. And the next thing is, it goes through, gee, that was beautiful. It's affected you at the heart level. You've had some kind of reaction to it, in addition to just seeing that or hearing it originally. And the third part of that is writing with a pencil. A pencil has graphite, and the graphite scratches across the page. And when that does it, it's like creativity is coming through your creative channel, like the creative birth canal. When you're scratching, all of a sudden you're taking ownership of your thoughts. And even there are even some writers. Ernest Hemingway used, they say, a pencil. He would use other things as well, but Maya Angelou, I believe, also used a pencil. Some of these people started their creative flow and then moved on to other things. And sooner or later, it winds up on the computer. But that's like the function, because you can feel it. Your creativity and sensitivity is coming through that graphite. And many people can feel that. You just know you're sparking that inspiration. So that's the way I've used it. That's the way I was taught to do it, from that inner channel. And it's amazing. It's amazing.
Did you two-part question. Did you write when you were young, and how old were you when you published this book?
This was the book was published in 2020.
Okay.
So I used to, when I was a child, I was told about at the age, I guess, of 6 or 7, that I would now have to start writing thank you notes to all people who gave me gifts.
Oh, okay.
So I realized it started, and naturally that time you're writing by hand. All right. And my mother would look it over and say, good job. And then they would be mailed to everyone. So, dear Aunt Harriet, thank you for the pajamas. Love, whatever it was. I'm just using that as an example. A little bit later on in life, when I was about 12, my mother said, okay, now you're going to be in charge of the checkbook. And I said, what? Wait a minute. I'm only this old. That's your job. And that's one of the best things that could have happened, because at that age, responsibility of knowing where the funding and how money is being spent, I literally had to write the checks. And my mother signed the checks.
Sure. No.
Right.
Okay.
But so she could check the date and how much it was and the name. But I had to write the checks.
Yes.
And so that was right. So that's still writing and thinking about what you're doing. Later on, with that calling at the table, then it started with stories. So I always look back and see these signs from age 6, writing thank you notes. How many children write thank you notes now?
No, all my grandchildren do.
do they write a full thing, or do they just say, Granny, thank you for the so and so?
They've started to write actual little letters, and that's only because
they're handwriting, using by hand. That is amazing. They're not texting it. That is fabulous.
I think it's because they know they want to get more gifts, and thank you is the best way to do that.
Okay.
And right now, when we're saying thank you, I have to thank you for being with us and sharing your amazing story. Thank you, everyone, for going into the no whine zone with us. And remember, you need to stop whining, start smiling. And then if that doesn't work, then you can start eating chocolate. Thank you, Arlene Hemingway, signing off from the Glitter Granny. Take care and stay safe until we meet again.
It's been a pleasure.
We want to thank you for listening to January Jones Sharing Success Stories. Always remember Ms. Jones' personal mantra, if you can think it, you can do it. That's what all of our guests have done with their lives, and so can you. You are the ultimate success coach in your own life. All you need to do will be to start sharing your own story with your family and friends. We hope that our guest stories will encourage you to explore an equation in your future that will combine your creativity plus connecting with others will enable you to be successful too. Always remember, your passion plus your purpose will equal prosperity as you explore the wonderful world of January Jones.